again, everyone. I'm here with my January 2026 reading list, and I hope you're as excited as I am to get through to these. I have quite a mix of books on this monthly TBR. Some of them are continuations from books I started in December and didn't get to because, my reading just tanked off a cliff. And they're great books. It was just that my motivation went down the toilet. So, whoops, never mind. Start again in January. It's a fresh start, new year, new us. If you're into that kind of jazz. The only thing I'm excited about New Year is my new reading goal and my resolutions, which I shared with you the other day. If you haven't seen that already, please go and give that video a look. But anyway, on to my new reading list. And we're going to start with my current read, which is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Now, I picked this up as a bit of a hopefully a quick starter to get me back into reading before then jumping back into my December books that I'm continuing with. It's a pretty short page count. It's about 136 pages. It's very specific for about 136. It is 136 pages. And it's a really interesting read for a book that is very short. It packs a lot of punch. It has a lot to say, if you know what I mean. So I'll give you a recap of what the book's about. Life on our planet as you've never seen it before. 6 astronauts rotate in their spacecraft above the Earth. They are there to collect meteorological data and conduct scientific experiments, but mostly they observe. Together they watch our silent blue planet, endless shows of spectacular beauty witnessed in a single day. Yet although separated from the world, they cannot escape its constant pull. News reaches them of the death of a mother, and with it comes thoughts of returning home. The fragility of human life fills their conversations, their fears, their dreams. So far from Earth, they have never felt more apart or protective of it. They begin to ask, what is life without Earth? What is Earth without humanity? Now, I can see why it won a Booker Prize, because it's a very interesting conversational narrative that talks about everything from relationships to politics. And like I say, to do that in such a small page count is really actually quite astounding. So if you're thinking of picking this up as a quick read, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as that. It's a short read, sure, but it has a lot to say and it is very quite thought-provoking. So it's a good book to start the year with, I think, and hopefully it kind of sets a precedent for the rest of both the year and the month. After Orbital, I'm going back to a book I started on my Kindle called Beyond Redemption by Michael Fletcher. I started this in mid-December as part of a ChatGPT recommendations content piece that I'm looking to share with you shortly. This is the last book I'm reading towards that. I also read A Crucible of Souls and The Shadow of What Was Lost that feeds into that content piece. So I'm looking forward to going back to this last book and then being able to wrap that up in total and kind of let you get a feel for how ChatGPT was able to recommend books for me or not, as the case may be. To give you a quick summary, here's what Beyond Redemption is all about. Faith shapes the landscape, defines the laws of physics, and makes mockery of truth. Common knowledge isn't an axiom, it's a force of nature. What the masses believe is. But insanity is a weapon, conviction a shield. Delusions give birth to foul new gods. Violent and dark, the world is filled with the Geistkranken, men and women whose delusions manifest, twisting reality. High Priest Koenig seeks to create order from chaos. He defines the belief of his followers, leading their faith to one end. A young boy, Morgan, must ascend to become a god they can control. But there are so many who would see this would-be god in their thrall, including the high priest's own doppels and a slaver no one can resist. 3 reprobates, the greatest swordsman in the world, a murderous kleptic, and possibly the only sane man left, have their own nefarious plans for the young god. As these forces converge on the boy, there's one more obstacle. Time is running out. When one's delusions become more powerful, they become harder to control. The fate of the Geistkranken is to inevitably find oneself in the after death. The question then is who will rule there? Now that sounds really quite interesting, and I wanted to pick up Beyond Redemption because I wanted a really dark fantasy, and this one definitely fits that kind of grim dark theme, where delusion is very much kind of ruling the roost and making us question what's real, what's not. And it's really interesting so far. I'm already 15% into the book based on what I started in December, and I'm looking forward to getting back into this one. Next is a book I also started in December but ended up putting down for a little bit because I was struggling to read it. This is another book I have physically, but I didn't bring it down because it's quite chunky and doesn't look very pretty because I've taken the paper cover off the hardback, and that is Empire of the Dawn by J. Kristoff. Now, I read about a couple of hundred pages of this book before I ended up putting it down in December, and it's a shame because I really like the story and I was really getting on with it. I think it was just a timing issue with maybe the end of the year creeping up and dealing with Christmas plans, and it's also quite a big chunky book, so having to handle it as well sometimes puts me off. I know that's weird, but it's a thing. So anyway, I'm hoping to get back to that in January. Empire of the Dawn is the final book in a trilogy written by J. Kristoff that starts with Empire of the Vampire, and I've really enjoyed this series to date. So I'm excited, but I'm also nervous to get to the end, and I think maybe this is also feeding into why there was maybe a bit of reluctance for me to finish this book in December, as much as it would have helped me towards one of my 2025 reading goals. But never mind. Just to give you a feeler for what Empire of the Dawn is all about, here is the synopsis. From Holy Cup comes holy light, the fateful hands sets world aright. And in the 7 martyrs' sight, mere men shall end this endless night. Gabriel the Leon has lost his family, his faith, and the last hope of ending the endless night, his surrogate daughter Dior. With no thought left but for vengeance, he and a band of his loyal brothers journey into the war-torn heart of Eliaden to claim the life of the forever king. Unbeknownst to the last Silver Saint, the Grail still lives, speeding towards the besieged capital of Augustine in the frail hope of ending Day's death. But deadly treachery awaits within the walls of power, and the Forever King's legions march ever closer. Gabriel and Dior will be drawn into a final battle that will shape the very fate of the Empire. But as the sun sets for what may be the last time, there will be no one left for them to trust. Not even each other. That's a really exciting synopsis, so I'm really looking forward to getting into this book properly and being able to give it the time and energy it deserves. It's a final sequel, so it'll be a series I can tick off my list, as much as I'm sad about that because I really love J. Kristoff's works, and this is quite also a dark fantasy, so I'm really kind of getting on with that kind of thing right now. So yeah, I'll have to let you know what I think when I finally get there. Let's hope I'm not devastated by that one. The last carryover I have from December is an audiobook listen I started probably towards the end of the month, but it's a long book, so there was no chance I was going to finish it before the end of the year. Sorry, one of my cats is having fun in the TV stand. Anyway, I started The Doors of Midnight, probably coming up around the 20th of December, but it's a long book. The physical book itself is 830 pages, so in terms of audio, I think that was about 40 hours. So I listened to about 20-25% of that before the end of the year, and that's still ongoing. It's just going to take a while because it's a big book. This is also a sequel, and it would have brought me up to date with the series if I'd finished it before the end of 2025. The series starts with a book called The First Binding, which was released a few years ago, and I shared some publication promotion reviews as part of that. This one I'm just reading in my own time, which is quite nice because again, it's a chunk and it's a hefty commitment, but I like my big fantasy. It's also Asian Silk Road inspired fantasy, so it's a little bit different from the kind of content I read a lot, but I'm looking to broaden my horizons. So I'll give you the synopsis of this one as well. Ari the Binder's legend spans continents and eras, moving in and out of myth as easy as the wind, as tales and their echoes spread across a sun-drenched land. Now, the storyteller himself awaits judgment for the murder of a prince. The stories say he has killed more than one. But what is truth, and what is a man if not a liar? As the telling of the storyteller's past grows, so too does the list of his enemies, and of mysteries yet to be solved. So Ari is a storyteller, and we go into the first binding and this subsequent book from a more mature storyteller, Ari, going back and recounting the events of his life. So he's already conducted epic feats in the first book, where he is told to have called upon the powers of the bindings to bring down a mountain and to kill a god. So this guy's a bit of a lofty fella, and he's a bit overconfident in himself too. So it's quite an interesting read. I like him as much as he is a bit of a liar. Yeah, he's a liar, let's be honest. But it's quite a good fun read, and he likes to really like spin up a yarn and really ham himself up. So it's quite funny to read and where he sort of gets himself. So yes, I'll be continuing with that audiobook, and I'll be updating you as and when I finished it as to what I think. As I mentioned in my 2026 resolutions post, I will be picking up Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Now, this is both on my fixed reading list of books that I want to read in 2026, but it's also going towards reading my own physical TBR. As you can see, I already have this one, and I've had it maybe a year and a half, 2 years at this point. So I am finally excited to be getting around to reading it. I have read a couple of books by R.F. Kuang already. The first of those being Babel, and the second is the first book of the Poppy War trilogy. I've really enjoyed her writing so far, so I'm looking forward to reading something that seems a little bit more contemporary. You may or may not be familiar with the synopsis of this one, but just in case you're not, let's go through it. Athena Liu is a literary darling, and June Hayward is a literary nothing. When Athena dies in a freak accident, June steals her unpublished manuscript and publishes it as her own under the ambiguous name Juniper Song. But as evidence threatens June's stolen success, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves. What happens next is entirely everyone else's fault. So this is a book about cultural appropriation and obviously like stealing other people's work. Don't do it, kids. It's not worth it. But obviously it's more contemporary than the books I've read of hers so far. So I'm really looking forward to giving this one a go. It's also not too chunky. Only about 300 pages? About 320 odd pages. So reasonably approachable. The text is also quite not too small, so that makes me happy. I have a long reading list, so the sooner I can get through my pages, the better. So that's my next read. Moving on, the next book I will be picking up in January is thankfully a collection of short stories. So this will be quite a nice read to intersect if I need a break from something larger, like Empire of the Dawn, for argument's sake. So I'll probably be a little bit flexible as to when I throw this into my reading list. I do have to bear in mind that I have a deadline to review this particular book, and that is the 27th of January. So preferably the sooner the better. So I'd best get on with it, hadn't I? To give you a recap of this one, this book is 180 pages and it's a collection of short stories. The synopsis is: Careful what you wish for. In dark chronicles, wishes have teeth. 10 speculative tales brimming with twisted humour and delicious pepper that lets you in on other people's thoughts, a radio show that predicts your fate, a bloodthirsty ghost who refuses to let go. Award-winning author Carmen delivers a chilling and razor-sharp mix of twists and dark suspense, perfect for readers who like their stories to unsettle and linger. 10 dark tales, 10 twisted fates, one thrilling collection. So I quite like my dark stories, as you've probably gathered by this reading list already. And although I'd argue it's not really the time of year for those types of books, I don't care. I will read them any day of the week. So that's going to be a nice, quick, short one that I can just throw in wherever. So I'm looking forward to giving that a go, and obviously to sharing my thoughts for this particular author as part of a publication blog tour. I've got 2 books left on this monthly TBR, and they are both geared around book clubs that I will be reading these books for. One of these book clubs is the Cottagecore Fantasy Book Club, and the second one is actually one I run at my own workplace, which is quite exciting. I'm changing up how I'm doing those book clubs a little bit at work. So in the last year or so, I've been setting like a prescribed book, or other members who come have been choosing a book and we've all been reading it. But this year, rather than setting one specific book, I'm setting a theme, and then anyone can come along if they've read a book that kind of fits that theme. It's a little bit more flexible. It gives people chances to obviously read their own books if they have their own kind of list as well. And there are books that won't necessarily be the kind of thing that everyone wants to read. So the book I'm reading for this book club, and based on the topic, you're going to see it's probably not for everybody. It's a book called I Know I'm in There Somewhere, and it's from a female author, and it's about women finding their authentic voice instead of feeling like they have to conform to society norms. Now, I'm sure there are people at work who don't have a problem with this. In fact, I know there are people at my work that don't have a problem with this. But also maybe this is probably more geared towards female readers, whereas we might have male members want to come along and read something else. So I did make other suggestions for books like Surrounded by Idiots, Radical Candor, anything that kind of fits the self-help kind of new year, new start theme is where we were going with that. But I have committed to reading I Know I'm in There Somewhere. So then if people want to follow the kind of traditional book club kind of format and read the same book, so we're discussing the same thing, then at least I've committed to that, and other people can follow along and read the same book with me if they so wish. So let me give you the synopsis of I Know I'm in There Somewhere so you know exactly what I'm reading. Based on her work with over 1,000 women across the country, psychologist Helen Brenner has learned that women feel the impulse to accommodate, adapt, and mould themselves to serve others at their own expense. Her solution is an invigorating new approach to women's psychology. The key to transformation, she explains, is not self-improvement, but self-acceptance, affirming and validating what we truly feel and experience and who we already are. Dr. Brenner shows women how to discover and express what they truly want and value, guiding you toward your own inner voice. I Know I'm in There Somewhere will show how to embrace, rather than fix, the inner voice that has been there all along. How to distinguish the outer voices, the expectations of other people around you, from your inner voice, the voice of your true self that goes beyond intuition and guides you wisely towards what is right for you. What to do when you feel the essence of who you are being stifled by external demands and expectations. So as somebody who is definitely an accommodator, I'm going to benefit from this book. So I'm looking forward to reading this one and maybe trying to put some of the theories and suggestions into practice. Finally, for the Cottagecore Fantasy Book Club, I'm picking up a book called After the Forest by Kel Woods. Now this one's quite exciting because yes, it's a kind of core cottagecore fantasy book, rather than being any kind of particular specific niche beyond that. So it's a good all-rounder, but it's based on characters after the story of Hansel and Gretel. So its fairy tale theme is obviously one that's very familiar to me, so I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes beyond that. Now, admittedly, I don't know much about this book beyond that because I kind of want to go into it blind. So it should be hopefully a fun, but maybe a bit more of a light-hearted read compared to some of the heavier, darker things on my reading list. So again, I might throw this in the middle to kind of mix things up. But I'll see how things go. So the synopsis of this one goes as follows. After the Forest is a dark and enchanting fantasy debut from Kell Woods that explores the repercussions of a childhood filled with magic and young women contending with the truth of happily ever after. Ginger, honey, cinnamon, flour. 20 years after the witch in the gingerbread house, Gretel and Hans are struggling to get by. Their mother and stepmother are long dead. Hans is deeply in debt from gambling, and the countryside lies in ruin, its people starving in the aftermath of a brutal war. Greta has a secret, the witch's grimoire, secreted away and whispering in Greta's ear for the past 2 decades, and the recipe inside that makes the best gingerbread you've ever tasted. As long as she can bake, Greta can keep her small family afloat. But in a village full of superstition, Greta and her mysteriously addictive gingerbread, not to mention the rumours about her childhood misadventures, is a source of gossip and suspicion. And now, dark magic is returning to the woods, and Greta's magic she's still trying to understand, may be the only thing that can save her, if it doesn't kill her first. So that sounds quite interesting, and yes, it does have dark elements to it. You can see a theme here to my reading, I'm sure. But I think, generally speaking, it will be a little bit lighter than the likes of Vampire the Dawn, which is very vampire kind of heavy. There's a lot of religion in there, things like that. So it's going to be a lot lighter than those, albeit there's kind of dark magic elements to it. So I have a long reading list. That's everything I'm hoping to get through in January. I'm not really expecting to get beyond that in order to get through all these books. Actually, a book I forgot to touch on before I started talking about my book club books is an audiobook that I'm looking to listen to, and that is one of the fixed reads on my 2026 reading list, and that is The Great Passage. Now, this is quite a short audio, so I'm looking forward to listening to that one, but it's a lot different to the books that are on my reading list so far. It's kind of contemporary, but it's set in Japan, I believe. It's been translated from Japanese, so it's a very different setting to that I'm used to. But its focus is on like loves and passions, relationships, literary, like a love of literature and reading words. So right up my alley, really. So very different. And I've picked this up in audio format to listen to after the doors of midnight. So I haven't got too much of a page commitment this month. I'll give you the synopsis for that one. A charmingly warm and hopeful story of love, friendship, and the power of human connection. Award-winning Japanese author is a reminder that a life dedicated to passion is a life well lived. Inspired as a boy by the multiple meanings that can be found for a single word in the dictionary, Kohei is devoted to the notion that a dictionary is a boat to carry us across the sea of words. But after 37 years creating them at Genbu Books, it's time for him to retire and find his replacement. He discovers a kindred spirit in Mitsuya, a young, dishevelled square peg with a penchant for collecting antiquarian books and a background in linguistics, whom he swipes from his company's sales department. Led by his new mentor and joined by an energetic, if reluctant, new recruit and an elder linguistics scholar, Majim is tasked with a career-defining completing The Great Passage, a comprehensive 2,900-page tome of the Japanese language. On his journey, Majim discovers friendship, romance, and incredible dedication to his work, inspired by the bond that connects us. So yeah, very, very different, as I'm sure you can see, and that's why it's on my fixed 2026 reading list. It's I was drawn to this book because of its kind of love of language and words, and that's why I started reading in the first place, and kind of what keeps me going with it. So that kind of resonates with me, and I'm looking forward to trying this book and reading kind of those same passions, but from kind of maybe a different culture. Those are the books on my January TBR, and as you can see, I'm not starting lately. I have 9 books that I'm hoping to get through throughout the month. 7 of those I'm picking up in either physical or digital format. So it works out I need to read about 75 pages a day in order to get through everything. I'm picking up The Doors of Midnight and The Great Passage in audio, which work really well for me, so I can listen whilst I'm doing everything from driving to chores around the house or going to the gym. So I have plenty to be getting on with. What are you reading in January? Have you already read your first book yet? If so, let me know what it is. Until next time, I hope to see you around. Bye for now.